Bethany.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing at the individual and the collective level.
Join us as we invite guests to share their personal paths to freedom.
So since we all have this common practice, we wanted to start with check-in. So the first thing is, so each person lists their body sensations, what emotions are present, and your next thought, since your brain's kind of always working on stuff.
I meant like a 2-minute check-in, like what's
like social
in the world, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm down for that for sure.
What's going on? I can check in with my body too. I can go first. Should I go first?
Yeah, go first.
I've been putting a lot of attention on my pussy lately. And I've been trying to say that word out loud. So that was that. And I feel her and I'm aware of her. And there's some like flow there. My teeth and my jaw feel tight. My eyes are heavy. Kind of a pressure in my chest. Sadness is here. Sexual is here. Some fear. Next thought, it's really just like, okay, so should I do my 2 minutes or should we each do our bodies first?
Let's each do our body check-ins first.
Okay.
I feel like a sharp nodding kind of sensation in like the middle of my back, around my spine. I feel like vibrating, like tingling, and a little tension in my jaw, and heaviness around my neck. And joy is here. Anger. I feel anger. And some fear. And my next thought is that I didn't put on lipstick and I wanted to. I'm going to do it now.
Do
it. All right, Megan. Here.
I have like fluttering in my solar plexus, tightness around the top of my mouth and my eyes, pounding in my chest. My heels feel heavy. I feel some fear, creative sexual energy, joy. Next thought is I'm hearing a bird chirping and I can't tell if it's outside my window or someone else's window.
I think we like all have birds going nuts. I've definitely got birds chirping over here, but it's coming through the computer too. I got feedback a couple times recently, like in the last several months, like potent feedback about not being attuned. So every time I'm playing this game with somebody, I'm trying on everything they say, like their body sensations and their emotions. And I'm like seeing if there's a resonance in my body with whatever they're reporting on. One of the ways I'm practicing different types of attunement. But when you said you had pounding in your chest, I could feel it.
I've had that thought about you before, and I don't think I've given you that feedback. That's interesting to me.
Of what thought? That I don't attune, or that I?
Yeah. On the podcast is actually where I notice it the most.
Oh, yeah. So the feedback keeps coming that I'm not attuned. So I'm like, yeah, I'm doing all these little practices to try out different things than I normally do, I guess.
I noticed.
So you're matching, like when people are sharing their body sensations, what other little practices?
Well, like when I'm doing somatic work, having the primary, like when I'm coaching, I'm primarily mapping. I'm listening and mapping in sort of my mind. It's sort of like a primary focus of attention. And so, especially when I'm doing SE with people, it's primarily body. So, like letting mapping go and mostly focusing on what's happening in my body and using that intuition, like when I'm taking the person in, because it's a lot of listening and like using any impulses, like even really subtle impulses to drive what invitation I might make next instead of like thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I value attunement a lot, and I've been noticing how I start attuning and I like go away from it, or I like divert my eyes, or there's like some level of like intimacy that I avoid, or like even like attuning, like when men are in the group, like how I'll be different. That's interesting to me.
My story about you is that it comes really naturally, and that you can do it to like a high degree that it becomes overwhelming fast.
That's what comes up for me around it too. Like I'm really interested in attunement and oriented to it, and definitely have an edge around like appropriate differentiation and boundaries of how to manage my high sensitivity, and like how much to just the tracking of like how to attune and be able to empathize in the way you're talking about, Bethany, where you're literally feeling what the other person is feeling, but still like how within that to maintain a like an amount of differentiation that is like healthy and like allows me to actually be present as opposed to just getting caught up in what the other person is experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Mine's more about like when I listen to your feedback, Bethany, and I try it on, it's like how much I've left myself so reliably, and the exhaustion of it. And now that I feel like there's some like rebuilding of a core and like an awareness of boundaries, energetic boundaries that I didn't know I could have. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like I don't know how to, I don't want to say that doesn't feel right. I'm not fully willing to like reopen the floodgates. Because I maybe I don't fully trust I won't leave myself again.
That makes sense. So you wanted to do some just gabbing with the girls, right?
I wanted to do a life update. I thought, well, I experienced Megan as like, I experienced you as someone who shows up really authentically, whatever space that I've been in with you. And I just, sometimes I'm like, I sit with on the podcast, like, what's the unique thing or the alchemy of that group, of that person or people. And I think the space that we've been together in our circle and now with the conscious racist, like there's some levels of like vulnerability and transparency and just like modeling of how we are with one another that I think it feels like is wanting to be here in today's podcast.
So you want to do like updates with like unarguable experiences around people's updates. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Does that feel good to you, Megan, to start there?
Yeah, sounds great.
Let's have Megan go first.
Okay.
It has been a super intense, full week. I have had this week on my awareness on my calendar for a long time because I have a big word packet due tomorrow. It's like my biggest board meeting of the year where I provide all my year-end reports and my self-evaluation and all of our year-end finance reports. And I haven't even really started working on any of that yet. And it's Thursday afternoon because there's so much other stuff that's been coming up. So yeah, it's been a full week, and I've definitely been checking in with just noticing like some of the work that we've done in my organization in the past year is like a lot of work on identifying and living into new behavioral values, one of which is cultivate well-being. And that's been on my radar for many years because when I started the organization, I worked 70 hours a week for years. And not until I had kids did that pattern get disrupted. And I feel generally in a healthier place, but this week, Tuesday specifically, I worked for 13 hours with like barely getting up. And it reminded me of like how it was before having kids. And it was just kind of humbling because it didn't feel aligned with my value of cultivating well-being. And I think I get caught up in stories of like how it should be, or like progress means that there's no going back, or like what is progress even anyway. But it's just been a lot this week. Stuff happening on the personal front also. And yeah, just my husband holding big life changes in his business reality and like flipping his bobcat over up the mountain, which required like an intense excavation. Anyway, there just feels like a lot of big stuff up. I don't know if you all track astrology more regularly than I do. I'm like, what's going on? Noah earlier was like, it seems like Mercury's retrograde again. I don't know. So yeah, it's a lot. And coming into this moment with both of you, I've definitely had a story of like, I've so been looking forward to this. I just love and respect you both so much. And I've had a little bit of like, I want to feel like so enlightened and grounded and like all these stories about how I want to be. And I'm super aware also of how that's like such a type 3 thing. And so I appreciate just being able to show up and check in and talk, and what you offered, Lauren, about authenticity lands well over here.
You're talking about working for 13 hours straight and barely getting up. I felt heat like all over my body and some tension in my shoulders and almost like pain and soreness on my butt sitting in this chair. And my story about it is like I've been working that much like almost every day for like a while now. I had anger. And I thought, and what you said about your kids and how that disrupted the pattern, that was true for me too. Because I used to always work like crazy like that before I had kids. And I just kind of, I don't know, I noticed a breath and I kind of just reminded myself about how I can do things however I want to, I guess. But yeah, I felt resonance.
I wondered where your kids were when you were working for 13 hours. And I just noticed how like peaceful and soft you spoke about everything, and kind of like in one, and I'm just like, I noticed kind of like there's some disconnect or incongruence between all those different events and the way that you express them. And then when you talked about, I want to be so enlightened or whatever, I just had my heart kind of opened and my pussy opened. And I was like, I just experienced you as like bringing your medicine vicariously through you all the time. And so I kind of had like a little chuckle, like that you thought you needed to do something different.
Thank you.
You want to go?
I can go.
Yeah, you go.
Well, like for the past 6 to 8 weeks, I've been just cramming everything in. And I chose it. I did it pretty consciously. I'm getting some feedback from my body that it's like not sustainable long term, but I'm not really sure if I need to reduce by like 15% or 30%, where the sweet spot of like honoring my body and cycles and stuff is going to pop up. And I kept telling myself like this really old story of like, well, once I get past that, well, once I do that thing, well, once I get past that week, everything's going to relax. So I've been saying that for like 6 or 7 weeks or something. And Lauren's coming to visit next week on Tuesday night. We haven't seen each other in a long time. And I took off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I have no meetings or appointments. Because even when I take off one job, I'm still doing other jobs usually. So like I take vacation time from my day job to do my other job. So that feels really exciting. And I feel really psyched about hanging with Lauren and I don't know, seeing my friends and going to the beach and eating and relaxing and maybe working out and stuff. And so now I'm doing that about this. I'm saying, well, by Tuesday night, that's when I'm going to start really winding down, and remains to be seen if I'm actually going to do that. Yeah. And I had a birthday ceremony planned that I just edited today because I have overwhelmed myself. And so it's much more simple and more just a special birthday than a ceremony now. And so that's Wednesday night. And I feel excited about being with my people. And yeah, I'm evicting a tenant from my house. And I'm enraged and like wanting to destroy her and just like navigating how strongly I feel about it and how reactive I am about this person who's in my home who won't leave and I can't make her leave. And yeah, like having a lot of energy run around it. Maybe even scaring myself with how much energy runs around it sometimes. That's what's going on over here.
When I heard you say that you weren't sure, like, what the sweet spot was around, like, what percentage to reduce, I just had the thought, like, I didn't believe you. And I'm like, what if you did know? Like, what if you just let yourself know? What would emerge? Felt a ton of joy when you talked about Lauren coming to visit and just like the spaciousness, and I made up that she'll help make sure that you're not doing any of your jobs. And yeah, that last part about your tenant and the rage that you're feeling and the way you scare yourself. But then I like could see the one in me that you reflected, Lauren, is like has this like really calm, pleasant demeanor that covers up like when things are really uncomfortable, like you want to fucking kill someone. You're like, yeah, I may be scaring myself a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I'm having like something about your jacket. So like when I first saw it, it was like the gold, the color was really pretty, but then you like leaned back like this and it's like, and you had this shirt, you know, I could see your breasts and it was like this really feminine body. And then it's like this masculine, very square. And that's kind of the theme of like energetically. It's like, I feel this kind of what we might call like a feminine energy, like wanting to emerge, but there's so much masculine and it's so, and I just was having an aversion to it. And that was like where my attention was the most. And then when the tenant piece, I started kind of like bringing in my own experience of like I'm in a certain place that I'll talk about in a minute. And it's just like it's like, if you try to evict your tenant forever and ever and ever, and you just completely lost, and she like took over your whole house and you had to give up your house. Like that's kind of the place that I'm in. And so I'm like, I was just thinking about like, what is that, going to turn into, and kind of exhausting myself with that tension that I'm imagining. I'm going to close my eyes and just see what wants to be said. Bethany's friend did attunement for me the other day. And one thing that I can't get out of my head is like that when she was in my energetic system, she just heard crashing and like saw everything falling. And that's how, and it was just, I felt so seen because that's how it's been feeling. This week I got like really sick. I want to say sick doesn't feel like the right word, but energetically depleted. And I it was COVID negative and all of that, but my body has just been like, it feels like it's just purging. I'm like shaking at night, like just shaking, almost like it's trying to shake the trauma out of me. I'm having some like low moments of just like, I'm almost 40, and while I have had a good life, it just doesn't feel like I've built a life on a strong foundation. And I'm making up that's like internal, like an internal foundation, like of safe, like real safety and security in my core. Like about a year ago around this time, I felt like my life was the best that it had ever been. I felt completely satisfied. It's like around the time you came to the ranch, I think, Bethany. And then on my birthday, I got the call that my dad was in the hospital and he died like a week later. And I just feel like that everything has just started crashing and burning since that, and it hasn't stopped. And I'm starting to see this time that I've been in Florida as some like rehabilitation. And I guess it's like as I'm kind of like waking up and like, wow, like looking at everything and coming to like a year next week and my birthday, like a new solar return. It feels like I'm rebuilding from the ground up, and that feels overwhelming. And it feels like I don't know, if I do creator consciousness from below the line or what, but I feel completely depleted and exhausted from what you might call like that masculine task. And I have done that, and I've done it I've manifested so much, and I've just been on this journey of like improving myself and getting better and figuring out how I can create the life that I want for so long. And it's like, I would get these pieces of it, and then to be here right now where it just feels like it's all crumbled. And I just like, I keep in my head, all I hear is like, I have no control. I have no control. I have no control. You can't control that. You don't control that either. Even when I have an instinct to like write in my journal to say a vision of what I want, like my whole body, like, it's like, don't. So I think the word that's coming, like I feel really humbled and really like I've been feeling weird about coaching people. Like I don't know what I have to offer. I don't know, like I'm just starting over kind of everything that I thought I knew. I don't know that I know. And I'll close with this. Like the card I pulled this morning is like that, like this, it basically is like that this time is like about only like trusting my own voice and my own wisdom and my own truth. I just want to let a wave of emotion come through real quick as I'm holding it. I noticed the one in me that like wants this life where like I thrive. I've been doing a lot of like Instagram comparison, like just so, and just not really believing or trusting that I can create that right now, that I know how, or that I have what it takes.
That last part made me think about what you said to me 2 weeks ago in the Conscious Races program of like, what does success look like and who's defining success? I felt like that most of the time you were checking in, I just want to like wrap you up in this like warm, dark cocoon and just like let you rest. And I really resonate with that one that just pushes so hard all the time, like always, like, yeah, I can feel that, like the self-exhaustion. Another thing coming to mind is practice I got from Sandra Ingerman, who's the shamanic studies teacher who I've learned a lot from, and just a practice around like saying to your energy body, like, please only let in the amount of spiritual energy and information that my system can handle right now. And that I've sometimes forget to do that, but that I've found it really powerful because when we are attuned to just that constant evolution, I kind of made up listening to you that maybe you forget that you have that power. You don't believe that you have any power to control like all of the crashing and all of the stuff that's coming in. And I believe that you do.
Thank you.
I also want to say a bunch of things that I think would be in the heroing category about how wise and amazing and qualified you are, but I'll save that.
Well, when you started giving me my little feedback on what I was saying, that's kind of when I started like listening and sinking into you. And I just was thinking like, she just always sees what's happening. She's just always seeing it in a different way than I'm seeing it. And it's always so valuable is what I was thinking about. Like always on point, I guess. And then you moved in to start talking, and rather than planning something you wanted to talk about, you checked in, you like paused and checked in and thought like, what wants to be said right now? And I just reliably experience you as so authentically in your practice, I guess. And I hear you talking about how hard things are. And I believe you that things are feeling really hard. And I kept checking, especially around the attunement feedback, I kept looping with you while you were talking. But I noticed I don't really worry about you, I guess. So then I probably made up a little story like, oh, Bethany, your heart's not open. Like, you're not seeing any problem over there. You're not really getting her. You're not really seeing her. And then again, like right around then, you were like, I'm going to let this wave come through. I'm like, I just trust her so much. I'm just not worried about her at all. Yeah. And I know about, I feel like I have a sense, I do a different kind of exhaustion sometimes, but I could feel the depletion when you were talking about it. And the not knowing, being like, I don't even know what I know. And I was thinking about Diana's podcast and like how simple that is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thinking about what you said about shaking at night. I'm curious about that too. Just at night.
And I talked to my sister today and she was like, I've been shaking at night, which is so like.
The night after our last circle, I was shaking a lot. Like woke up at 5 a.m. like with a lot of shakes.
Yeah, like I'll just have these like, I had another night a few months ago where I felt like I woke up in the middle of the night and it literally felt like if you could feel what it felt like to download from the internet, like a new program, like if you knew that feeling, like that's how it felt. And this one feels more like it's like when my dad died, even when I was in the car, it's like I almost felt like zeros and ones. It felt like we're like leaving my body. Mm-hmm. And this feels like more like cellular memory leaving my body. And like, it's almost like it hurts my body to let it go or something. Like there's some kind of reaction my body's having as it leaves. And I'm like seeing, I have this, when stuff is in my 12th house, like Jupiter's retrograde in my 12th house. And I have this pretty reliably experience of like, it's on the back side of my body. It's so weird. It's just like, because your 12th house is like the unseen. And it feels like stuff, it gets like that, the unseen stuff is like on my back. And then like these, you know, like all these messages, all these things. So I think even the stuff that I expressed and what's going through my mind, and it all feels very old, you know, and like it's coming off my back. And just seeing today, I just was having a thought like, there's just so much that I have never been able to accept about myself for so long. And I had this one big opening on Monday around self-acceptance. And it felt like my body got a huge drink of water just to like, I just admitted like, I am fucking in love with him. And like, I make it so wrong. I make it so bad. And I just am like, it's just what it is. I can't control it. You know, I can't control what he does or what happens with it. And I told myself, I said, I trust who you love. And I couldn't believe how much me wanted to hear that from me and know that from me. And I think there's something about it, like this tension of all the things that I can't accept and moving into more acceptance. Like I'm even looking at myself, like I'm thinking about when we started the podcast and how I've just totally like pretty much left makeup behind at this point. Like I'm not really dyeing my hair weird colors. The nails will never go, but I'm recording from my bed because I just couldn't fucking pull it together. And we'll see what happens. It felt really good to hear you say, like, I trust you and there's not a problem over there. And I think it's taken me a long time to create relationships that aren't so triggered by my unwinding that they can't be with my experience. And I feel like I've created a lot of those relationships and I'm really grateful for that. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just mapped a bunch of astrology stuff on what you said, and I feel like I'm really starting to get it. Like I'm really starting to get some of the astrology stuff because you just said, so you're Pisces rising, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jupiter rules Pisces. And so your first house is Pisces, which is the body. And your Jupiter retrograde in your 12th house. So the ruler of your first in your 12th in retrograde in Pisces, and Pisces is about, it's like there's no boundaries. It's huge and it's water energy, and it's like comes in and out. And then like the unconscious part of it being retrograde and being in the 12th house, what's unconscious is this new awareness. You're redoing this awareness around, I don't accept myself, and had this big shift of energy when you found a new level of acceptance for yourself, or a reaffirmation of it or something like that. And yeah, astrologically, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, when Jupiter's retrograde in my 12th house, I'm starting to map the physical sensations of different planetary movements and how different things feel, how Saturn feels so different than Mars. And so the 12th house and Jupiter, this has happened a few times this year. And I know what it feels like. It's really strange.
When you're talking about the energy around your back, the first thought that came to mind is like earlier today, like I think just a few hours ago, I had like this irrepressible urge. I have a couple of rattles on my altar on my desk, and like I just needed to like move the energy, but I was like rattling for a while behind my heart and thinking about, like, in some traditions that's called like the spirit door, just like a lot comes in and out there, and just like that's a place that, in what we were talking about with attunement and boundaries, that's a big place to just be aware of what's hanging around you and what's coming and going. And it made me also think about how I just got curious about like interdependence, and how like the different ways that information comes through, that like I'm sure that was about me in some ways too, but now I'm like, was that impulse about you? I had the experience the other day of, I pulled a card that didn't really make sense to me, and the next day I talked to Marika, or maybe it was just a few hours later, and I was like, oh, this card was for you. And I'm just like tracking and curious about how just like my default orientation to trying to make meaning just for myself about the things that happen for me, but how like part of the beauty of being in an interconnected field is like playing with how we bring things through for each other also. So all that, I want to shake my rattle around you, Lauren.
Right here is where I checked in that I have all this tightness and stuff, and that's why I kept going like this, because it's like there's a lot of energy, kind of tight energy right there too. I want to be in the interdependence.
Well, I was going to say another way to look at it, and sometimes the way that I look at it is like, if any person is in your field, they are not you. So anything that you pull or you experience, like everyone around you in your field is reflecting that. And one of my teachers, she says that the back represents the collective and your front represents the individual. And in my last medicine journey, I had this big kind of, it was like two big things. It was like, I was hunched over carrying the collective, like, and I was so under so much pressure and weight, and I had no strength here. And then your left side is feminine, right? Like,
yeah.
My left side was so exhausted from carrying my right side. And it was like an imbalance of masculine and feminine. And in a lot of ways, like, I feel like that's the whole summary of everything that it's like that journey just started this unraveling of my intention for the journey was intimacy. So what the story I could tell about that is that I haven't been available for the intimacy that I want, whether it's individual or communal, because of those imbalances between giving and receiving, between putting other people's needs and blah, blah, blah before my own, putting the collective before me. And that's even some of the stuff that I guess I'm actually starting to become aware of is like, I've given so much in service of like a mission to like communities and to people and work. And when I really check in, like at 40, like there's a lot of things that I need and that would support me to thrive that I have put no energy into at all, and there's some like shame and sadness about that.
Like what?
Like, and really, I just like really building a home, whether it's like a physical house home that's like makes me really happy. I've just kind of like, got a house really early and I just like have made it work. Like real deep, like financial stability and like thoughtfulness, pleasure, like, really play. I just like what I'm really, really craving as I feels like the second half of my life, ironically, is maybe what a lot of people crave in the first half of their life. Because in the first half of my life, I was just like beeline to like create, work, achieve. And now I'm just like, I want like a lot of kids and puppies and dogs around and nature and like a beautiful house and like a man, this like particular energetic, body of man energy, like laying next to me every day, like, and enough money to like make that work and not, be too worried about it.
Well, I'm only a couple days ahead of you. So if we're looking at progressed moons or whatever it is, I have to assume that stuff's coming because it's happening over here. So whatever happens over here happens over there pretty reliably and vice versa.
I really felt like the clarity of you saying that, thinking about supernaturalling practice, which is something I'm pretty into. I'm like, that's just...
What is that?
I love all your practices.
Really?
Like every time you think of a practice on here, make sure you go into detail. And if you want to go back to the shamanic teacher.
Oh, I do. I'll talk about practices all day. Lauren shared a podcast about it in our first circle. And it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wrote a book, Becoming Supernatural. And the basic premise of it is that my interpretation, like what I hold about it in my consciousness, is that we're creating our reality out of emotional memories. And so to the extent that we're stuck or bogged down, we're creating our reality equal to the vibration that we hold in our body. And then we get like pretty looped into like then reacting to the reality we're creating with that same emotion. And so the practice of supernaturalling is to hold a vision. It's like a meditation practice. Hold a vision of something that you want to create and like deeply embody an elevated emotion in association with that, so that you're actually literally having the experience, which is what I felt when you were talking, Lauren. Like I felt the experience of what it feels like to be in that house with that man, with all the dogs and the puppies and the children. And the awesome thing about it is, as a meditation practice, like for however long you spend any given day doing that, you like actually get to experience somatically like how good that feels. So regardless of what's actually happening externally, but then the premise of manifestation, which I personally have found to be pretty potent, is like actually shit does change in the material world also in response to that energy that you're holding and creating from.
Yeah.
There's like a lot, there's like a whole series of meditations and a lot of like, the model is developed by a doctor. So there's a lot of like cool physiological stuff and measurement of energy frequencies and different little charts and graphs in the book. But in a nutshell, focusing on what you want to create while feeling really good in your body. It's potent.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. It feels like a gift because I believe that so to my core. And I think that's the part that I've exhausted myself from is like with that awareness, it's like I've been looking at my life since I got that awareness, which is probably about 7 years ago, and like kept trying to hold this higher vision. But then like everything in my body, I feel like for the last 7 years, everything in my body that doesn't align to that vision has been like under reconstruction to some extent. And what you're making me feel in this moment, like I can feel that essence somatically right now. And I don't know that I could. I don't know that I was really available. Not that that's wrong, but I think my what I'm saying is that, and I'm like mad at myself right now. It's like I'm telling myself the truth and I'm mad at the truth. That's what I'm saying. Like I was super aware, like I started going to New Thought at Bodhi probably like 7 years ago. And they talk about planting a seed in the soil of your consciousness, but like whatever weeds are in the soil. So like you say you want to manifest something and then everything that's in the way of that manifestation comes up first to like be cleared. And yeah, so and I can feel the one in me that's just like also mad that it's like take like the process. When I started it, I'm like, oh, I'll manifest this in a year. I'll manifest this in a, like I actually, it's been coming up this vision that I wrote with, have you ever done like future pulling?
Mm-mm.
It's where you like speak or write a vision as if it's already happened. And so I wrote this like beautiful thing and I've gone back to it 100 times and I'm like, is this any different than when I first wrote it? And it's not. But my progress to get there, it's much slower than what I imagined when I started and much more intensive. And I'm thinking about this reading that I got recently about my purpose and about how like it's part of my, basically she was like, thank you. I get it. You're telling me all these things. I get it. Okay. Sorry. It's like my consciousness. I'm like, okay, I'm getting clarity. But it basically was like, you're going to suffer a lot in your life. And it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because like you came here to teach people like what that's like and like how to move through that. And I just like so often make it because I'm like doing it wrong or something's wrong with me. And like that, or like these, messages about being a 4 or making it hard or like all these things. And like, yeah. And I think when we make contracts, we don't really know what that's going to feel like in a body.
Thinking too about when you started laying out that vision, like I am so grateful for the steadiness I have in certain respects in my life with like we bought our home 10 years ago and it's like where we live is magic. Like I feel so held and supported by the spirits on this land. And like my parents separated when I was a baby and like I grew up going between households. And so my whole adult life, I was like constantly moving and like super oriented to like, where is my home though? Like creating my home. And then I make up also being a 3, like having those, like checking the boxes of success of like, yeah, like home and getting married and having kids and having my career, but how like you know, things can all look great on the outside. It's part of why I'm not on social media anymore, because I felt kind of bad of how often people would be like, you're alive. It's like so beautiful and perfect. And it's like nice how inspiring it was. But I'm like, oh, damn, like you don't know about the gnarly arguments that are happening here and the drama and like the messiness on the inside. So I was just thinking a little bit about how like the work, even if the like material realm progress feels slow, I'm making up that when you land in that, like you're going to be so ready and available for like the energetic frequency that you want to have filling all of that. Like you're going to be ready for it to be like feeling good. I make up, which doesn't mean that you won't have drama and arguments with that wonderful man. That's what I make up, is you're working from the inside out.
I want to hear about your land and how you came to find it. And like that's a thought I've had about you and Noah a few times, is like, aren't you like, how old are you?
41.
Oh, I always think you're like 10 years older than me. But I meant younger. I'm sorry, 10 years younger than me. That's where I like place you, but I'm like, shit, like how did they get that shit together so early and how young? But still, that would have been in your 30s that you got that like magical place.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because so Noah and I met in college in California, but we live now in Bellingham, Washington, which is where he grew up. And so I spent 10 years living all over California, like, as I was saying, like moving around, trying to find where is my spot. There's a lot about California that I resonate with, but ultimately, even 10 years ago, we were starting to be pretty concerned about the drought situation down there and the fires. And it just felt like we wanted to get somewhere I spent a year and a half living in Tucson, Arizona. That really confirmed for me, like, I really need to be near water. So timing was good in a couple ways. Like when we bought this house, there was an Obama, I forget that, like some kind of act that made it like pretty affordable to buy a house. And we got, I think our down payment was $13,000 and we got $8,000 of it back in tax credit. So it was like, I realized that like a year before we bought this house, I was like, wow, like we actually could buy a house. But then what's funny is because I guess I grew up without a lot of money and wasn't super oriented to like material realm accomplishments in that way. Like my work that I do is very, like, I run a nonprofit and I was never focused on like creating financial security for myself. I was coming from I relate it to like puritanical values of like I just should work as hard as possible for something that's like good and not take anything for myself. So it was kind of a surprise to me to realize that like it was actually within my reach to be able to buy a home. But then we were planning to buy a spot in town because we didn't think we would be able to find land that we could afford. And I have a lot of strong planning tendencies, which I'm unraveling a bit, but especially at that time, 10 years ago, I was like pretty rigid of, okay, like here's our criteria for our house and we're making our list. And I like, at that time it was MapQuesting. It was before smartphones, like made like the most efficient route to like go check out all the houses that met our criteria. We did all of that. And then Noah's like, his parents, he grew up here. So we were driving back to his parents' house and he's like, I think if we like drive this other way, this is Noah is not a planner. He's like, I think we'll go this way. Like there's a way to get through. And he's like stopping at all these houses along Lake Whatcom, which were like way out of our price range. And by the time we drove by our house, we're a couple of miles from the lake. I was just so annoyed about all of this. I'm like, can we just get home? Like none of this is on the list. Like, let's just keep going. And he saw the sparkle right away with this place. And I did not. And I like really honor him for like his empathy and intuition that he could just see it right away. This was also the same week that we got married. So it was a busy week, even though our wedding ceremony was limited to 12 immediate family members, but it was still a big week. We came back the next day to get inside and look around, and the house was empty except for this kind of grotesque big blue couch in the living room. And Noah just wanted to look around, and I was like, whatever, fine, I'm taking a nap. I just lay down and fell asleep. I was like so not interested in engaging at all. And then I honor myself that my intuition did come through, because when I woke up, like once I turned my mind off, I woke up and I just had this feeling of like deep, deep peace. And what I made up about that is like, I could feel like the like thousands of like snuggly naps with cats and babies on that couch with like the Christmas tree there, just like all the peaceful moments that were to come. It was like, I felt it in my body, and I was like, immediately like, we need to make an offer. We need to like have this happen. And it did. There was a little moment of like, it had been on the market for a year and no one had made an offer. And that like the day before someone else made an offer. So there was like an exciting moment of like, is it going to happen? But yeah, it felt like real grace that we ended up here. And the property was really overgrown with blackberries and alder trees. So we could only really see what was in the front of it. And we have 5 acres down here, and there's like old growth cedar and streams and all the stuff that we didn't know till we moved here from California. It's been pretty epic. So yeah.
I'm so into you laying down and taking a nap in an unfamiliar place. Like I make up before you realized how safe you felt, that you're like, I'm gonna take a nap. Like I don't just take naps in places that aren't my house or something.
Or on couches that could have bed bugs, because
like in a grotesque couch.
And did you keep the couch? Is that what you're saying? The couch has stayed?
No, the couch left. It wasn't like dirty. It was just not my style. It was like poofy and shiny. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, something you knew.
It's something about the energy here too, though.
Yeah.
You need to lay down and take a nap here.
Yeah. Something in you just liked the energy and felt safe enough to rest, which for 3 sounds pretty nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's been interesting too, like both Noah and I have a lot of like orientation to building community, and we have a couple of yurts here and we have friends who used to live there. And then a few years ago, we bought more land up the hill with a few other friends. And there's like all of this, like a meta life question I'm holding right now is we have all these spaces and like beautiful land. And it's like, what is it that wants to happen? And there's an interesting intersection between that and that during COVID, I realized that, which you both know, like I realized I'm an introvert, which I had never tracked at all, because I am really good at pretending to be an extrovert, even to myself. So that it's like, I'm in like a slow exploration of what does it mean to stay in connection with myself, and like honoring that, and also like honoring this kind of karmic feeling thing of that part of my purpose is about creating space for community and creating space for people to be in relationship with nature and the land. And that's been like, let's say since right after college, I went and lived and worked at the Omega Institute. And it was such a beautiful experience of living in community in a healing. Omega is the biggest holistic studies retreat center, maybe in the world, definitely in the country.
Where is it? Is it in New York?
Upstate New York, Rhinebeck.
I think I've been there. Mm-hmm.
It was like incredibly, like still definitely a magical highlight of my life and an incredibly formative experience. But that sense of like, it really deepened that sense of like community, living together with people, learning and growing with people is really profound and like appealing to me. And also like, I want so much more time all by myself than I get. So there's interesting tension there.
So in the apocalypse, in the impending apocalypse, can Lauren and I and our younger associates relate to some kind of yurt on your property?
Absolutely. We're pretty ready.
When you were talking about it, one, I'm like, who the fuck is taking care of all this land? I'm constantly thinking that. And then because there's like these logistics that I'm trying to work out in my own mind, if I ever get to that place that I see in my mind, like who does all the, but in the Surrender Experiment, have you ever read that book?
No. Sounds like a good one for me.
It's a good one.
Writing it down.
You.
Michael Singer.
It's the same guy who wrote Untethered Soul, but it's his autobiography. And he just starts kind of like collecting all this land and he doesn't know why. And then it turns into this like total retreat.
Meditation center kind of thing.
I wondered what was happening in you when you to retell that story. What do you notice?
Well, I noticed I like have a fondness for that story. I've obviously told it a bunch of times. Also, I noticed like when you ask like, how did you do that? I kind of noticed like, I wish I had a better answer of like there's some like secret, like here, break it down, like do these things and this could happen. Like I think
top 5 ways to get your plan.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of a heroing impulse because I want you to have that house learned. So that comes up a little bit. And also I just feel like talking about all of that, I just feel so full of the abiding gratitude that I get to live here, which I'm appreciating because especially today, I had like a little bit of a tantrum earlier about the room that I'm in right now because we're remodeling there's all this land and all these spaces, but they're all kind of small. And so like we have a small house and then next to that, there's a little cottage. And that's where my office was for most of starting when COVID lockdown started until January. That was my space. And I love it out there. And it's like this beautiful summer day. And I just want to feel, I'm like looking out at kiwi vines and they're beautiful, but I want to see more than I can see in this little room. So I'm appreciating tapping back into just like, even when I can't see the garden or see the woods behind me, just that I can really feel how like held I am by this land. And I'm so grateful for that feeling.
Does the land have a name?
Not that I know yet. Let me know if you find out what it is.
Get any hits, Lauren.
I really felt that like I just got on an airplane for the first time in 2 years and going down to California. I got I guess this kind of, it makes me curious, Lauren, about what you're saying and just that desire for home, because it was a very humbling experience, how disoriented I got and like how off center I got in just a week of being gone. And it just made me realize how much stability I derive just from being on this land, being settled here. It was really, really hard about it.
I took my first trip to California last week too. That's my first business trip. And I also was like, ooh, it took me like, I was wackadoodle coming back here.
Great word.
It's Paul Dagg's word. He says wackadoodle like 14 times every time we spend any time together. But my house is very like neat and organized and kept. And when I travel, like I was traveling all the time for so long, I would put everything away in its exact place. Like when I got home, even if that was like midnight, I would like do the laundry and put everything away and unpack everything. And it would be like all set to go. And when I go to sleep at night, every little thing's like kind of organized. And I just like threw everything on my bed. I did like 5 SE sessions the next day. I didn't have the kids. And then I had the evening and I didn't even clean. I just like watched Mad Men and like zoned out. And then I slept in a bed with stuff all over it, which literally has never happened. And then the next day I was with Carolyn and we did this activity with the kids. And when I came home, I finally cleaned up and I realized I had no idea where my wallet was. It was full missing. And I like don't lose stuff. And I was like, I don't even know when the last time I saw it was. I searched for hours. I had the kids looking. I told the neighbor boys were here. And I was like, if anyone finds my wallet, I'll give you $100. I had kids like tearing apart the house, trying to find my wallet. I was like, how did this happen? Like, I don't lose stuff. And then all my friends used their magic powers to help me find it. It was real. I can tell you that detailed story if you want to hear it. But I was like, I had Carolyn sitting and doing energy work, like wondering where it is and looking for it. I had Drew, my astrologer, do a Hori chart. And he goes, you're going to find it. It's close to you. It's probably in the house. It's not on the floor. It's up. It's raised up. It's suspended. And it's probably somewhere dark, like a shelf or a drawer or something like that. And I went back in my closet and pulled the bag back out and looked and didn't find it. And I was talking to Lauren on the phone while I was doing this or texting. And I was like, got any hits? Do you know where my wallet's at? Can you come in my field? And she just goes, yeah, stop looking and let it come to you. And I was like, okay. I was so tired. I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I had a text message from Drew and he goes, is there a pair of pants? Like you need to check pockets of pants that you were wearing. And I went in my closet and suspended in the dark closet, suspended up a pair of pants hung that I wore Saturday night. My wallet was in there. And then, so Lauren was right and Drew was right. And I told Carolyn, I didn't know how much work she had done. I was like, I found my wallet. So you don't have to like sit in attunement for 6 hours trying to help me find it anymore. And she was like, oh, I already was sitting and all I could see was your wallet in front of your house on the street against the curb with leaves all over it. And I was like, I lost it in October and that's where I found it. You're in the wrong timeline. And she was like, oh. Like, all my friends are pure magic.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. You have the right friends.
But I felt real thrown off by being away for sure.
I'm thinking about the contrast of what you said to me, Megan, about kind of the, if I'm saying it correctly, like the rebuilding on the inside will be represented on the outside and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And how you're kind of pointing to how much you have created that on the outside. And then how when you left what you created, right, like it was hard to hold it. And that's kind of what I've reflected on. And I think part of why I've been brought back to my actual childhood home in this bedroom that I lived in for like 6 months before I went to college. Like, it's like, that like I never, there were just certain foundations I never had. And like chaos was so normalized to me. So that's what chaos was happening in here. And so chaos got created out there, you know? And so this, you know, and kind of what you were saying, like it never even occurred to me to create stable home. Like it wasn't even on the radar of that, you know? So I'm like kind of impressed how that like occurred to you that you could want that, it existed. It's something, you know?
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, it is both. I've created it externally, but it's not like I feel calm all the time when I'm here either. And just learning about like, I think specifically learning about Enneagram and learning about being a 3 and having that lens of like how good I am at making everything look good, even at the level of like when we were talking about in the check-in, just like looking really calm when I'm really not calm at all. And that's just been such a huge gift and deep ongoing learning of the work with both of you and conscious leadership. Just learning to attune more deeply to myself and like loosen the grip a little bit of that persona that's like just always calm all the time. That's a little bit for, you know, for those who are sensitive, it can be unsettling, the disconnect between that like calm persona and the energy underneath that. And my husband for years was like giving me feedback that just wasn't landing, because before learning about the drama triangle model, like it was such a revelation to me to find out that a hero was a below the line thing. I just, before that, and that was only like a year and a half ago, maybe, that I first saw that, maybe a couple of years ago. Like before that, I literally really believed like, if my voice is nice and I'm choosing my words carefully and I'm like sharing like good, insightful, analytical thoughts, then like that's consciousness. That's like the utmost way that I could show up. And it's just so liberating and exciting and humbling to realize like, oh, that's just a persona, and like real freedom is a lot messier looking than that. And like when like my experience is like, because I have everything looking so nice and I'm like good at making it seem nice, it's like can be extra hard to make space for that messiness. But it's like so exciting. And I see how it's like one of the things that motivates me the most is like the possibility that I could, through how I show up, give permission and make space for other people to be more authentic too. And actually related to that, I want to share with both of you, so I mentioned my board packet. Part of that is I get to develop these annual leadership goals, and I have an awesome board, and I'm able to be like pretty, like really authentic, and really authentic with those goals. And I never have solicited feedback from everyone in my organization before to inform those goals. Like I've played with a little bit here and there, but I just did that. I like opened it up, like here's a form, but also if you just want to talk to me, but if it's, more comfortable to do anonymously or not anonymously, and just like got a whole bunch of feedback. And it was a couple years ago, I was tracking like intellectually, like, oh, it's important for our cultural health in our organization to like give and receive feedback. We should get better at that. And we like brought in trainers, and I was like going through the motions, but I had so much fear inside myself and so much defensiveness. And I didn't really know how to, I was barely tracking that. And I certainly didn't know how to like loosen any of that up at all. So like the truth was, while I was like going through the motions and like, yeah, we need to give and receive feedback, I'm like, don't fucking give me any feedback. Like, I don't want to hear it. And it just feels so good to be like, I want to hear it. Like I might get scared. It might be really hard, but like, I'm so curious. And none of the feedback was like that hard yet. So I can see I still have work to do of like making that safe. That's what I make up is like, I've experienced that in circle with both of you of like, let's give each other like the hard feedback. It's hard. It's actually can be hard to, especially in a work context, I think, like let go of the idea that we're supposed to be like really nice to each other all the time. But I'm super excited to be learning about that, Lauren, and the conscious racist, like learning more about how to create liberatory culture. But I just wanted to share that, like, feels like a big shift for me to be open to feedback that I definitely wouldn't like. It's 100% because of the work that we've done in Circle, and it feels really meaningful to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you had the nice vibration going, and you're just creating niceness and convincing yourself niceness, and then you got some new data points that things that aren't nice can be of service, and you're kind of like, ooh, that's exciting. Yeah. And I wonder if you're delivering any of that laser feedback that I know you're capable of delivering to the other people on your team. If you're going
not
first.
that much yet. That's a big learning edge still, and we need to keep practicing. I think I get really hung up on like, well, if everything is a projection. I'm starting to see how both can be true. I was really in either or thinking like, either I'm like a clear channel, and this goes back to like our interconnectedness of like not separating myself from other. I can see how I'm still doing that. And that's why I get hung up in this idea of like, I have this limiting belief of like, who am I to give that feedback? Because it's just something I'm seeing about myself that I'm projecting onto that person. So why do they need to hear from me? So I'm still a little bit in that.
It's both.
Yeah, it's both. Right. And I guess it's also like, I maybe like not trusting that other people will see that, but I think it also just takes practice. And the main place that I've practiced giving feedback is in my marriage. And that's not really like it's not going that well. So there's just a lot more emotional intensity. I feel like practicing at work would probably go better. I work with not that I'm not married to an amazing person too, but like, I'm so honored to be able to work with the people that I do. And I actually like believe that they would hear my feedback graciously and trust my intent, but it's still uncomfortable for me.
Well, I just started to think about your work, and I don't even know I forget if Lauren even I don't know if she even knows about the stuff we do on the side with, with the environment and stuff. Our jobs, quote unquote. But, thinking about what we ask most guests, I mean, there's, when I think about the mission and vision of your organization and what I hear you're maybe expanding into or considering expanding into a little bit more, I'm interested in what your thoughts are around healing the collective and healing in general, what your relationship to that idea is, and what you see or what you sense or feel.
Yeah, thank you. I know that you always ask that question, and I actually have a poem that I wrote that I'd like to share related to that. Okay. It's a 3-part poem, and it came through on the full moon in February, right before COVID really changed everything. And it was like leading up to that full moon was the time that I like found that wisdom from Sandra Ingerman right when I needed it, of just like telling myself, like, only let in the amount of information that my body can handle, like only evolve and bring in spiritual information at the rate my body can handle. And then when I finally got to that full moon, it was like there was this relief, and this poem just came through quickly. And I think it will make sense how it relates to that question, but I can explain more also. Layers of remembering. 1. First, the heartbeat of the earth. Low, deep, and slow. The pace of decay becoming soil. The steadiness of the ocean churning. Again, the heartbeat of the earth. Low, deep, and slow. The pace of stars moving across the sky. The steadiness of stone. Yes, the heartbeat of the earth. Low, deep, and slow. The pace of your own blood coursing. The steadiness of your breath. This one. And the next. Does your heart ache for something you cannot name? A taste you almost remember? Oh, the heartbeat of the earth. Low, deep, and slow. The pace of rain clouds forming. The steadiness of a leaf unfurling into green. Forever, the heartbeat of the earth. Low, deep, and slow. The pace of truth. The steadiness of returning. 2. Now, some questions. How quiet can you get? Do you know where the moon is right now? And where ideas come from? Again, some questions. How still can you become? Do you know what's blooming in the forest right now? And where inspiration originates? Really, some questions. How well can you get out of your own way? Do you know in your bones that you are surrounded by magic? Do you know how to listen? How to really listen? 3. Clean water, clean food, clean air, sleep. It's simple, really. Put your phone away. Go outside and take a deep breath. Can you smell what season it's becoming? Can you feel the heartbeat of the earth, low, deep, and slow? If you know that, just like everything else, you are made of stardust, what becomes possible? What becomes necessary? Setting aside the illusion that you make anything happen ever, and the misunderstanding that insight will ever come from striving. How still can you become? How clean and clear and steady? You have magic at your fingertips. Your heart, the whole world, is begging you to remember who you are. So I think my answer is it's about remembering. That's part of my answer of the paradox between the individual and collective healing, and the idea that we are already healed and we're in the process of healing is like the remembering process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It makes me think about one of my favorite quotes is by Joseph Campbell, and it says, "The goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the heartbeat of the universe and to match your nature with nature."
Mm.
And as you were reading about the heartbeat in the poem and the speed of blood, and like sometimes, like right now, I feel so lazy or so slow or so, and I'm like, I'm moving at that pace. That was the thought I had. I'm moving at that pace, and I don't. It's very strange.
The feminine pace.
Yeah, I had a memory. So, I mean, you were talking when I was at the ranch, Lauren, last summer, and I went to do journey work. And my journey, I typically have journey experiences where there's like a lot of information and a lot of stuff happening and lots of things to write down and record and think about and process. And I had nothing, not one thought for a couple of hours. The only thought that I was holding was, I don't have any thoughts. And people, they kept checking in, me like, how you doing? I was like, it's nothing going on. And I was like, I was in a like beautiful yurt tent thing, laying down, just laying on my back. And after a little while, Lauren was like, how you doing? And I was like, I'm in the ground. And I was just like, I felt myself deep down in the earth, resting peacefully with not a thought. And the whole thing ended up being about, and I'd say probably still integrating to some extent, about flow. And that's all I was thinking. I was just thinking about how my body felt and bringing that into my being right now while you were reading. I was just like, oh yeah, it's like when I was on the ground with Lauren in Colorado.
They say that like your first journey, like your formal one, like it kind of maps your work.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, I was reminded of that recently. Someone said that to me, like that saw my first journey, and they were like, it's making a lot of sense. But in my first journey, I became one with the earth and I was feeling her betrayal. I threw up. I felt I had this one point where I felt like this very masculine energy, like destroying me and taking and consuming from me. But I was very personified as the earth having that experience. And then at one point I became like, it zoomed into my body and my body just turned into an entire universe.
I had very little visions or other things in that journey, like very small flits and flutters later. But I just remember, do you remember this? I remembered like typewriters and computers and stuff just getting like, it was just getting like thrown out. Like it was like all this business stuff. Getting like, that was like one of the only visuals I had.
I don't remember, but that makes a lot of sense. Given your question. I don't know if it's 15%. You never thought I had it 0%, motherfucker. That's what I had. I was like, fucking 0.
All right. And everyone has to move here and we can all make like $10 a day and we'll like take care of each other. If like 75 people live in this house, then we can all like just lay around all day and nurture each other and cuddle and take a break.
I'm not sure how money and we get resourced fully in this new way of being, but I think it's already taken care of. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that, like having the privilege of leading an organization and like really exploring how how much integration is possible, like how much of shift of consciousness is possible from within the constraints of like running the business in a capitalist society. But I feel like hopeful and curious about it because I'm like, all these good people coming together, like the team that I work with is so amazing, like such good hearts and minds, and just that possibility of like, can we slow it down and like be in a different consciousness while still like making these contributions in this context? That's another paradox.
We're all about to find out.
We're getting ushered into something. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how long it's going to take to arrive, but
we out here.
Yeah, we out here. We out here, and we crumbling. Well, you needed to end at this time? Is that right, Megan?
Well, we had this time. This was the time that we picked, and I have a call that is okay if I'm a little late for right now, and then I have a sales call at 8:30 in the half hour. And I heard a Dougie arrive as well. Really, in the last few minutes.
Megan, when you check in, is there anything else that's wanting for you to be complete?
It felt really good to share that poem. Thank you. And yeah, I feel complete. I really love both of you. And I really love being in the space, the field that you create together. It feels like a real privilege. It's like, I feel that when we're in circle, but I'm like just the two of you, just getting to be like one other person in the field that you create together feels really good. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I want to appreciate the like flow that occurred and the ease of this one and the presence that I experienced and the reminders that I gave myself, and kind of like there's like some grace that I created for myself by processing out loud some of that. And the poem was just beautiful and perfect. Would you send that to us?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what a show note is, but it feels like if we did that, the poem would go in it.
Right. It seems like in a really organized podcast, they would pick whatever it was that people talked about, including like referencing books and.
Yeah.
So check out our Instagram story one time and you might see the poem.
Sometimes we forget to tell us before the podcast came out. Sometimes we don't even know it's Thursday. But
we're at 2,000 streams, which I felt really proud of.
Yeah, we love that. 2,000. We love that for us. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're turning yourself on by it and you want to help us be better organized people about podcasting and show notes and I don't know, probably helping us schedule things because I think we don't have any more scheduled coming up more. I think we got to get it together. So if you want to help us do that, we are here. healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. We do check the email. I check the email.
Megan, thank you so much for being here.
What's that?
It's like a really good test to say that in front of me because I have such an insatiable, I'll organize that. I'll get that for you.
I don't have enough to do. I'll just add that to my
I want you to do it before you take care of your board packet. All the show notes. Just
making a board packet after this sounds like death. I have quite a bit of work that I have procrastinated to do after this call. So
good luck to all of us.
Good luck to all of us.
Thank you.
All right. Love y'all.
Love y'all. Hey, everybody. If you've got any feedback for us, we welcome it, or ideas about future guests, email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com. We are at Healing Podcast on Twitter, and we are at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Monda Creative, who edits all of our podcasts, and Two Tall Women Productions, who produce. Thank you.